You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.
How do you eliminate the divide between yourself and everybody else that most of us find exists? That is the topic we're going to talk about with our guest today. And this is, as always, the Win-Win podcast with me, your host, Ben Wolf. And before we get into talking about the topic, I want to introduce our guest today. He is an expert EOS implementer. He was a co-founder of the Visionary Forum. He's the author of the forthcoming book in September 2024 called No Honesty, subtitle slightly to be determined. And you can find out more about him at nohonesty.com. And that's no honesty with a K and O-W, not a N-O, in case you were curious. But nohonesty.com. You could also take an honesty assessment there to determine how open and honest you currently are in your life, in both your personal life and in your professional life. So I recommend that you take that assessment there, which I also did. And with that, I welcome Ken Bogard. Welcome, Ken.
All right, Ben, thank you. I've been waiting for this day, excited to talk with you, especially to share it with the world. Every conversation we have has just been so rich and meaningful. We tend to take it a little bit deeper. And you're just a great human being. So, I'm excited for this. This is good.
Well, that is wonderful. Thank you so much. I did not expect that, but thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You're always a pleasure to talk to as well. It was great seeing you a few weeks ago in San Diego, sunny San Diego, mostly sunny San Diego, and the EOS conference recently. But I very much appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So let me ask you this, and I ask this of all my guests, but give us a quick 2-minute background, like a little context so we can understand what how you got to where you are now and what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, I think, a lot of my story is around this work I've been doing with the EOS, working with a lot of leadership teams, probably helped over 300 leaders and managers who can understand the volume of people that I've helped and I've worked with. And it's about 60 different companies as well. And they're all small to medium-sized organizations. Mm-hmm. The topic, eliminate the divide between you and everyone else, though, kind of stems from this work that I've been doing for all these years in EOS and this baby of mine that's called No Honesty, K-N-O-W, honesty. And I've always been, if you just bring it way back, I've just always been intrigued with communication. And people having, I don't know, a lack of honesty in life. And, including myself, I struggled with it and still struggle with it at times, but I'm getting close to mastery with honesty. But I've just always been intrigued with communication since I was little. And, I'm sure there's a big, long origin story I could give you sometime. Maybe it doesn't belong here. But when I was an EOS implementer about 5 years ago, I've gotten a few years under my belt working with these teams, and I'm working with these teams and I'm like, something is stuck. Something is off here. And my teams aren't moving fast enough. We're going through the motions, getting through the agenda, and man, what is it? And then one day I was with a bunch of other EOS implementers in Marissa Smith's room. Marissa Smith used to be the head of marketing for EOS Worldwide. She's a brilliant implementer. But anyways, I was in her session room and we're all collecting together. And I saw these healthy rules. It's going to be really hard for the people to be able to read it. But participate's a privilege to be here, no politicking, et cetera, all these healthy rules. And then I read this one rule, be open and honest. And that whole day sitting in that room, I'm like, these healthy rules, these are the things missing in my session room, in particularly be open and honest. And probably not in the old school definition of open and honest that I think people are used to, right? I think when people think open and honest, they're like, yeah, okay, I'm ready to be honest. I'm ready to share. But the aha is this. Those are two very, very different words. Being open is not being honest, and honest is not being open. And that aha, to me, was the two-sided piece of real communication that my session room was missing with all of my clients. And so I'm working with these grown adult professionals who are struggling at being open and honest. And I will tell you, if they can't be those two things, none of this works. And so out of this has been born this intense obsession with open and honest in everything that's being done in your personal life and in your work life. And here we are today launching Everything No Honesty, which is very exciting.
What does that look like? Like, how does that, like, what are people seeing or feeling when there's that lack of openness and honesty? Or at least, maybe there's some superficial level of it, but like, when you see people like, yes, we're getting through all the official things, we're checking off the checklist, but something is missing in the soul because of that lack of openness and honesty. What can people expect who are listening to or watching this to be seeing or feeling or hearing that looks like when that's happening?
Yeah, what does it look like? Well, I'll give you maybe a high level feel on that. Do you know when I don't know, sometimes my clients pick on, like, I don't want to call it sales for whatever reason. We think that people tend to give a bad name to sales. Have you ever met a sales person who felt inauthentic to you?
Yeah.
Well, that's why you don't like sales, because they're not being real with you. They're not being honest with you. There's something off over there. They're selling something they don't believe in. That's why you wouldn't like sales. But then there's salespeople, and you probably don't even call them salespeople, who just totally believe in their product, totally believe in their service. And you're like, you can feel that, and you want that product or you want that service just simply because they're authentic, real individuals. So I think the feeling is when most people get the sense something's off here, right? We all get that sense. And I don't know how to explain it. And this hasn't been researched heavily on my end. All I can tell you is just a sense, right? And like, I get the sense somebody doesn't like me without asking them, but you're probably right. You have this sense about people. So I think what happens is that people have a tendency, I think we got to look within here to start. Like, when you're not comfortable in your own skin and you don't feel like you can say what you really feel or what you really want, there's a lack of honesty happening right there, right? You're a little bit uncomfortable. Your shoulders are up. You're tense. You're a little bit anxious. I mean, these are all signs that you're not able to be truly and freely yourself, be truly and freely honest. And so I think you got to recognize those things that hit. On the other side of the equation, a lot of people aren't being open to one another. And quite honestly, it's probably the bigger problem our society is dealing with right now.
Mm-hmm.
So to give you a quick lesson on like what I think is happening in the last decade or two, there's been this huge push for authenticity and vulnerability and be you and take care of yourself and all this stuff. That's great. I don't want to take away anything away from that. The problem with that is it's really me, myself, and I focused. And so what's not being focused on is the person across from you. What do they need and want? How do they feel? How can we get in tune to their perspective and their experiences and really connect and relate with another human being? And so what I think is missing is this key piece of that equation, which is openness to one another, like this ability to listen without reservation, to put your own needs and wants on pause for somebody else. So like when you and I are hanging out and we're just chatting, like I'm doing everything under my power to try to shut down all my judgment and expectations and serving myself to understand you. And man, is that really hard to do. But if we can do that, can we work really well together? But people put up all these walls and all these blocks and continually serve me, myself, and I, and that really hurts the team.
Right. Well, I don't know. When I think about, times when I've held back on saying things or find that discomfort in my stomach when we're having a conversation, we're trying to work through an issue. I guess sometimes what I feel happening is that we're talking about an issue or a problem or a challenge or a goal, and we think that certain solutions or certain options are off the table. Maybe whatever we really need to do, it's like, oh, we can't afford to lose that person, so let's look for a process solution, or like instead of a people solution, or whatever it is. But just
right.
we somehow have like tied our hands behind our back in terms of what options we think are available. So therefore, or so we think that certain things are not even solvable. So we just don't even talk about it. Never even comes up because we just kind of pre-decide that whatever's really going on is probably unsolvable anyway. So let's talk about something else that we can deal with more easily.
Right.
I don't know. There's one thing that I think maybe comes into it sometimes.
Yeah, that's good. So tell me about that a little bit more, Ben. Like what do you hope would be different in your dealings with issues? What's paint
Well,
more ideal than.
I mean, let's take that example. Like, let's say that there's somebody, we think there's a people issue, right? They can't own this seat that they have, but we feel like either they have so much institutional knowledge, or they're such a wonderful person, or or we just can't afford to hire somebody else, or we can't afford the downtime and the onboarding time or energy. And so we just say, okay, how can we just say, okay, things are not getting done here. How could we, build a better babysitter for that person? Or how can we build a better process or change the CRM in some way that makes it so they have to do what they have to do, whatever. I don't know. We just like look at we just talk about, hey, there's something wrong with our CRM, or there's something wrong with our processes, or there's something wrong with the integrator or the management or something else, whatever. We just like go other places.
Yeah, I would call that not being. So if you feel somebody were not the right person, right seat, and you know it in your gut, but you don't say it, and you have all these workarounds. I mean, that there is an element of not being fully honest, right? There's an element of pain that organization is going to experience, because now we are tolerating the very thing we feel is off.
Right. Putting a Band-Aids on it.
Totally. And what's happening is, you're picking all these other issues that just simply have less resistance. So it's easier. It's easier. And almost in a way, the really strong word for it is we've gotten a little bit lazy. It's just easier to talk about other solutions and not have direct conflict and have to try to navigate a very challenging back and forth about right person, right seat with that person. Right. And so I get it. I've been there. But then when you do that and time goes on and you're all sitting there knowing you have a problem with the right person in the right seat, but we're not saying it, there's this kind of like icky feeling or fog that just is in the room, and nobody feels real comfortable. And so it actually, in the long term, it ends up just slowly deteriorating, our trust in one another, because we're all sitting here thinking something, but we're saying something totally different. And people pick up on that, and it's not good for a team. And that person who was the right person, right seat issue, potentially, it doesn't mean we fry them, right? It doesn't mean we have to be brutally honest. I think that's the wrong approach to honesty. But I think we approach that person with love and respect and love and support. And we tell them exactly how we feel and exactly how we think in a way that's going to resonate with them. And man, it is so hard to do. Easier said than done all day long. But if you really care about that human being and you're less focused about your needs and your insecurity, and you're more focused on how do I benefit this individual, they need to understand that they're not delivering, they are struggling, then man, that's really up to you to have the courage to say what needs to be said. Like, Ben, if there was something bad said about me in the world, like, I think we have enough trust that I think you would come to me with it and you'd be pretty honest with me about it. And I'd be so grateful for that. And I think some of the problem is people are not grateful for feedback.
Well, it goes to that openness point from before.
There you go. And so because they're not open to it, well, I might not be totally honest now. And that's why openness is so crucial. So like if Ben, you were to come at me with some pretty heavy feedback, I got to find a way. If I want to grow and be stronger, I got to find a way to put my walls down and totally be present to what you're saying and understand how it relates, right? Shut everything else down, all those preconceived expectations and notions, and hear you. Whew, am I going to grow faster because I've decided to be open? And I think that's why, like, the education on openness and honesty is so important and fundamental to everything that's being done in the session room and just in life in general with another human being. And so I mean, that's where I'm trying to take it, right? And so for your issue you're referring to, man, we have to go there. We have to have the courage to go there and strengthen our ability to be honest and open always. And man, we can conquer nearly anything. Can we do that?
Where does this, or what does this lack of openness and honesty look like sort of like in our personal lives?
Yeah, I mean, real communication to me is 100% honest and 100% open. And, communication is everywhere in the workplace and in our personal lives. I got a pretty heavy story, at least in my life, it's heavy, pretty heavy story for you. I'll share it. So right before I had my two kids, I was living with my wife, Ilsa. She's given me full permission to share this. And we're living in this house together, and we gotten into fights. We have some of the best fights, man. And then we love each other so much right after, but we have some of the best fights. Well, years ago, about 6.5, 7 years ago, we got into a real good one. And to this day, her and I, we talk about it and we don't even know what it was about. So it couldn't have been that big a deal, right? But you just you grow distant. You don't want to talk about an issue. You don't want to engage in the conflict. You can feel something's off. You're too tired. So you don't really talk or communicate real well, right? And we had gotten to a point where something triggered us and we were so upset with each other that we stopped talking completely. So it was a Friday and we stopped talking completely. And so now we're about to enter the weekend. No conversation, no anything, all of Friday. And unfortunately, Ben, I had nothing planned on Saturday. And so neither did she. So we're stuck in this house together and avoiding each other as we're walking by in the hallway, right? It's just so silly. Two people are in a room together and we can't communicate. All Saturday goes by. We did not talk. Crazy. Sunday, we get to Sunday and we're still not talking. The weight is heavy in the house. And she's in the upstairs and she comes down and I'm sitting on the couch and dang it, she made eye contact with me. And I'm like, here we go. And she looks at me and she said, so you can fix leadership teams, but you can't fix us. Stab to the heart, right? I'm pissed off. I'm upset. I'm emotional. Now I'm thinking about like how brave she is to say that. Like I'm all over the place. I'm a mess, right? And God bless her for having the courage to say something, because I wasn't. I was digging my heels in. I was stubborn as all hell. And so she says this to me. And then it just hit me after a little bit. I'm like, she's totally right. She's 100% right. Like I've given no effort to us, right? And I've put in all my effort in with these leadership teams and the clients that I serve. And what happened next was really what helped this whole thing become capable in the session room for me a couple of years later. But I sat down with her and I'm like, look, the only way we're going to make this work, Ilsa, is if you are going to be 100% honest with me about how you feel and what you want from me, like everything, let it rip, like just 100% honest with me. And I'm going to be totally open to you. And so I'm going to take my walls down and I'm just going to hear you completely. But here's the deal. I got stuff with you too. I'm going to be honest back at you. And I expect that you be totally open to me. And if we can do these two things, I think we're going to be okay. And so we start going into conversation and we struggled at first, right? Like, okay, the walls went up, didn't like what she said. And then I was aggressive in what I said to her. Her walls go up. And so we had to call that out. And we're like, hold on, that's not being open. And that's not being honest. And we had that conversation for about 2 hours. And we ironed out everything that we had going on, that we, in terms of like how we felt and what we wanted from each other. And we were ironing out our ability to be open. And my gosh, that thing that moment in our life is like one of those key things we go back to often in our marriage. So when we get into fights that are pretty tough or controversial topics that we're working through, we go back to, let's be totally open and totally honest with each other. And man, that's what's needed to sustain a really great connection and relationship with another human being, is that we have to agree to be those two things.
Right. Eliminating the divide between you and everybody else.
That's
right.
right. So it was hard.
Open, walls down. Doesn't mean agreeing, but just means putting your feelings, thoughts on pause, not stop, not throw away.
Right.
And honest is, sharing and saying the things that you don't want to say. Maybe because I hurt the other person. And again, this is professional or personal, maybe because it's embarrassing to about yourself, that you don't want to say certain things. One of the things you're doing for this No Honesty project is holding workshops. I think you've already held some. You say on your website that one of the purpose of or I think I saw an article that you said that you were quoted as saying that one of the purposes of your No Honesty workshop was to overcome West Michigan nice culture.
Yes.
What does that mean? And I talk to a lot of people in the, Midwest and other parts of the country. Maybe New Yorkers have a little easier with this, but because I'm in New York, but talking about people in Minnesota, I'm sure there's similar things, everybody's so nice. So what do you mean when you talk about eliminating West Michigan nice culture?
Well, so West Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan is where I'm from. And then there is New York, which is a different animal. Right. I had this
Eastern time zone, right?
That's right. I had this gal on this leadership team. She shared with me, she goes, there's West Michigan nice, and then there's New York spice. And I'm like, oh, that's good. That's good. Because that's what that's how you experience it, at least from my purview. And Detroit, it's interesting because in Michigan, there's West Michigan, Eastern Michigan. You could call it Detroit if you want to. People are different in Detroit. Like a leadership team, born, raised, grown in Detroit, and a leadership team, born, raised, grown in West Michigan, they're very different.
Mm-hmm.
And a large part of it comes from like this West Michigan nice thing, which to me is like this strange cultural loophole type thing where you can't get complete honesty from your closest neighbor, your friends, and sometimes even your family member, right? Your family members. And I mean, for some, that's a comfort. And for others, that's a pain point. West Michigan, nice. Think about that. You come into this area and it's like people are friendly. They wave to you. Even if they don't like you, they'll wave to you, right? It is very nice. And that's great. Honestly, it's great. It feels nice for a community. But when West Michigan nice enters the session room and we got difficult topics to work through, and we got people that aren't performing or people that feel a certain way about somebody else, man, that rears its head in many ugly ways. And like we're stuck, we're not able to navigate because we're sitting here being nice to each other. And then so maybe in 6 months or 9 months or a year, God forbid, a year and a half, we'll finally have the courage to say what we need to say. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of up against like this cultural thing. I've been raised here, so I get it.
Right.
And so even I'm dealing with it differently. And so some of my West Michigan leadership teams get somebody from Detroit on their leadership team. And they're like, whoa, this gal or guy, they're intense. And I'm like, I just think they're just telling you how it is. And actually, we should probably just be more open to what they're saying. And, maybe we'll work on their delivery a little bit. But there's Minnesota nice, there's Southern hospitality. I mean, there's just different things, right, in different areas. But man, it's pretty thick in West Michigan.
Well, how do you if somebody's in such a nice culture, not like a niceness culture, how do you coach them to how do you typically coach people to help be more honest and more open?
Yeah. To get around the nice thing a little bit, like in the session room, just picture, I'm trying to give you a good example. Picture an IT firm, 35 employees, and this arguably bold man's leading the group, right? And and we're trying to navigate some sort of issue. I'm trying to play back this session in my mind, and somebody's not performing well at the table, and it's obvious. I mean, it's obvious to everyone. It's obvious on paper. It's obvious in the tone, but nobody's really saying it. And well, I'm trying to extract it out of them. I'm trying to get them to say it, right? Like, I'm not trying to be the answer person. And
make observations.
yes. But everybody also has to get into this at their own pace, right? Like, you got to find a way to empower somebody to do it. Session's done. I get a phone call after, and that leadership team member, that bold man on the team, right? He calls me and he's like, "Oh, what did you think about that? Man, Steve's really not pulling his weight. You know, it's been bad. And, you know, we got to figure out a different spot for him, or, you know, it's just not working." And you could sense that, right, Ken? And man, I should have told him this, that. And he goes through everything he should have said. And this is what I say to a lot of my clients. I'm like, I wish you had a microphone right now on your phone and you could go back and just play it for Steve as is, and just tell Steve exactly how you feel and what you think. How unfair is it to Steve that we're all sitting here thinking that thing about Steve, and you're saying it to me right now? I'm the wrong person to be talking about this with.
Yeah, at the wrong time. Should have said it earlier.
Yeah. And so that's, I mean, that's just one of many tactics I use, is like, look, play a microphone, play it back for the person. Like, that's what I would want to be done for me. Like, if anybody's thinking something bad about me, man, you got to tell me, you know.
It's funny. So, I've had so many times it happen where people come to complain to me about something or someone.
Yes. What do you do with that, Ben?
And one of the things that, they say is like, like, what should I do? Or like, what do I say to them? So like saying, and I've actually said that so many times, what you just said to me, say that to them.
Right.
Like, it's not magic. Like, I don't know, people think there's some magic formula of like how you say, how you bring up an issue with somebody, or how you tell someone, hey, you should have done the floors this way instead of that way. Like, if it's a flooring business, whatever, but just like, that doesn't have to be big dramatic things either, but like, just say it.
Right.
Just say it out loud.
Right.
Like, not to me, not in your head, just say it. Yeah. Is one of the biggest themes. I mean, I guess it's on the theme of openness and honesty maybe, but one of the biggest themes of just conversations that I have with every leadership team member, again and again and again and again, and hopefully through repetition, I mean, they're becoming habituated and getting better as leaders and managers. But, just with their people, just state clearly what you expect. And then when the time comes to review it, or your weekly meeting or whatever, just state, this is what was expected. Did you do it?
Yeah.
Or did you not do it? And if not, then like you said, coach, help.
Right.
And then if it keeps happening, start escalating the situation if they're still not doing. But just, people don't clearly state their expectations.
Yeah.
They think that the other person should just know. I assume you this happens to you a lot. It's like, I shouldn't have to say that. They know, or they should know. Right.
They should know, but then it's not clear, right? You haven't brought clarity. Ben, something I'm really curious about. So I've seen you in action. So whether you're speaking, you're talking to other people, I haven't seen you like in your level 10s or in say session room. What's your style when a controversial topic hits? Like, what's your approach typically? Super hot topic, it's really tough. It's weighing on everybody. Like, how do you handle it? I'm just so curious about you, Ben, and so what's your approach?
I guess I would say openness, honesty is, just forthrightness, authenticity. I forgot if I've told you this. I don't know if I ever mentioned it on the podcast before. I've started to realize in the last year or two, I might be a little spectrum. I think I might have mentioned this to you before. I might be a little on the spectrum also. So like, I just function better when we could just say things straight out than when we have to posture or like figure, like politic, or like figure it out, or get the person to think of it on their own. Or I'm not 100% great at that. I'm more just better at just stating whatever it is, or asking someone else to state whatever it is. And I mean, some super hot topic comes up and we just say, like, I don't know, I just try to break it down. Like, well, okay, what are the, what's going on? What are the possible causes? All right, let's write them down. Or, I'm always taking notes during sessions or during L10s, let's say, to write it down. Okay, what are the possible causes? All right, let's just break it down. Could it be this? Could it be that? Is it some of each? Okay, like let's talk about cause. All right, now let's talk about potential solutions, and
Sure.
just kind of like lay them out, write them all down, and then just agree on next steps. I don't just kind of just like break everything. I guess that's what I do. I try to take the drama out of it. It's just like, okay, this is an issue. It's just an issue. So,
Right.
and you can't solve all your issues at the same time. So you have to decide which, maybe there's 5 people issues on the leadership team or within the company.
Oh, that's so good. I bet you're moving faster too, right? When you're more direct, your teams are moving faster. When you're not, it's like you're waiting forever to talk about the thing. It's just slowing us down. And you got this cool, calm demeanor, right? So it helps,
Well,
it lands
you
better.
haven't been cooler. I mean, you just have a very chill demeanor, but yeah, I definitely, I mean, virtually never, I can't think of any time where I'm yelling at anybody or, I mean, I don't usually raise my voice. I tend to have a pretty, hopefully not monotone, but I have a tendency to be relatively, even keel.
Right. Man, so what a skill that is too, to create balance in the room, and I think like when I get so think of a strong type A or type D, depending on whatever assessment you think it is, but I'm talking about a strong-willed dictator style leader who just like, man, they just bulldoze everyone. That is an imbalance, and it screws up the balance in the room, right? And so when somebody's that strong, well, that's going to shut down other people, and you get different power levels from different people. And so like the super powerful person in the room, or at least that's how they're acting, or dominant, for other people, how much courage they have to try to combat that. My gosh, that person's coming at you with a semi. I mean, it takes so much more effort for somebody who's maybe not as confident or dominant or bold or courageous or experienced or
That
whatever.
person pays their bills.
Right. Yes, that's right. But that person, by not realizing how important it is to have some balance and share the room a little bit more, and they're missing out on so many ideas and opportunities from the rest of the team. And so like your balance that you have, I mean, I think that's a great trait of an integrator. They can just ease the room, right? And bring that leadership team connectedness to the visionary, and that visionary to the rest of the team. So a balance, man, I think is really important.
Yeah. We've had another, one other thing I've done. I've had, let's say a group of partners in the past who were able to bring up some like major differences, like seemingly irreconcilable differences, and differences in ways that were very offensive and hurtful to the other partner, other partners. And one of the things I've tried to do, I don't know if it's helped or not, but what I hope that people took away was just to praise them and just say, because it feels like, oh, now we're further apart because we weren't talking about this before. So we felt closer together, and now we're talking about it openly. So we feel further apart. But I just try to praise them and tell them that this is great. I mean, this is healthy. We're closer to resolution now than we were before, because we're actually talking this through. I mean, no guarantee that it's going to work out, but certainly before it even got brought up, there's no way it's going to get worked out. So that's certainly another one.
Oh, so good. But I wish, so hang on that note for a second. That is you trying to help people be more growth minded, right? So I think when a lot of people experience a challenge or a conflict or something controversial, they back off, or they don't want to deal with it, or it's too much. But by doing that, like by putting up your wall and saying like, nope, I'm not going to engage in this, it's too much, there's no opportunity for progress.
Yeah.
And so if we can start seeing those very difficult conversations as like, this is what we finally needed, we actually have the true condition on the table. Like the truth doesn't have to hurt if we're all really open-minded to what somebody else is saying, right? Like the truth hurts when we're not open-minded and we're not willing to listen. Like, right, because we put the walls up and we're like, I don't want to do it. That hurts my feelings. I can't handle it. And it hurts. But if you're like, no, I'm ready and willing to take on whatever it is that's about to hit, and just truly open. And it's a real gift and a talent and a skill to try to get to that level. But my gosh, we can handle anything, like any controversy we can handle. And it's why you need both sides of the equation. It keeps coming back to this very simple equation, right? Let's not make communication too complex. We need to be honest to one another. We need to be open to one another. If we do that, we're unstoppable, you know? And so, yeah, good. You're just poking at trying to get people to be more growth minded when it comes to challenges.
Yeah, it's growth minded. And I think there's that tendency to feel that, like, when we're talking about something we disagree strongly about, there's a feeling that we're now further from resolution than we were before, when it's exactly the opposite.
Right. Yeah, you just put a spotlight on it, right? It was already there. It was already that far apart.
They were before apart. It's not like this disagreement just came about right now. Like, this has been there before. Yes. Yeah, we just weren't dealing with it. We weren't, it wasn't even on the table. So we couldn't even deal with it, which just makes us, by definition, even though it's more painful and the difference is more externally apparent, but we're actually closer to resolution than we were before.
Oh, so good.
But this is good stuff. I appreciate you, teaching, eliminating the divide between oneself, everybody else. Again, the two keys: simple, not making it complex, but no honesty. Maybe is that openness to others, putting our not automatically agreeing to others, but just putting ourselves up, putting our walls down, as you said, putting ourselves on pause, our perspective that we have on pause, and an honesty of trying to actually share what we think or what we feel about things, because otherwise we're just holding ourselves and our team, our companies, our families, our relationships in a stunted phase.
Yeah, good word for it. Good.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Ken.
You're welcome, man. Thank you, man. This is so rich. I'm going to be on fire for the next 4 hours of the day now because of this conversation, but
that's awesome. Yeah. And about to go into my weekly L10 with not really an L10, but it's really just the team meeting and IDSing with all the integrators on our team going in, and hopefully influenced by this conversation as well. So I appreciate it.
Good. Encourage them, man. I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, and I appreciate you too. Thanks for making the time to have this conversation, teach everybody about getting closer to others, being more productive in your family and your relationships and in your teams. I appreciate it. And thanks for coming on.
All right, man. Take care.
You too. And everybody else, we'll see you on the other side. Thank you.
You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.